political signals emerge continuously before the third plenary session, exposing major issues. Xi Jinping traces origins in Yenin. His words leave much room for deep thought and fright. Eradicating ethnic culture, CCP massively renames villages in Xinjiang. Under economic downturn and political pressure, China's middle class sparks an exodus wave. Officials fall from power or die following CCP's persecution of Falun Gong. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Political signals emerge continuously before the third plenary session, exposing major issues. Amid the CCP's 20th third plenary session, which traditionally concentrates on economic policy, many suspicious political signals appeared as the session approached. On June 13, the CCP's General Office released the National Party and Government Leadership Team Construction Planning Outline, underscoring the two safeguards and two establishments. The outline mandates that CCP leadership teams prioritize forging political loyalty and diligently implement the Party Central Committee's major decisions and Xi Jinping's directives. Commentator Li Lini suggests the leak of this document, ahead of the third plenum next month, exposes a critical issue: widespread disloyalty towards Xi within the CCP. Officials are accused of either lying flat or engaging in outward compliance while secretly opposing Xi's policies. Many do not follow Xi's commands. As a result, Zhongnanhai, the CCP headquarters in Beijing, is compelled to issue documents to reinforce loyalty and strengthen the mechanisms that ensure adherence to commands. 3 days after the outline's release, as previously reported, on June 16, the state media CCTV issued a caution to party members and cadres not to touch a high-voltage line. This piece compiled various speeches by Xi Jinping, which warned the bureaucracy while emphasizing the overarching leadership of the CCP and colloquially urging party members to maintain absolute loyalty, or else face dire consequences. The next day, on June 17, the CCP Central Discipline Inspection Commission published a document with a tone of lethal intent, titled "Strictly Uphold the Party's Political Discipline, Resolutely Maintain the Authority and Centralized Unified Leadership of the Party Central Committee." This directive stresses ensuring the unimpeded execution of Party Central's orders and specifically criticizes cliques and factions, asserting that forming interest groups or engaging in exchanges of interests is prohibited. This series of stern warnings from Zhongnanhai to the entire party is perceived as a response to the widespread disloyalty within the CCP, requiring Xi Jinping to address this by fostering an atmosphere of fear. Commentator Li Lini observed that although Xi aims to secure officials' loyalty, he is fundamentally unable to achieve this. Instead, he is compelled to intensify purges to apply pressure, indicating a foreboding sign for the forthcoming third plenary session. In conjunction with the propaganda efforts, the CCP Central Discipline Inspection Commission also acted, targeting high-profile figures as a lead-up to the third plenary session. This included actions against Wang Bo, former vice chairman of the Inner Mongolia People's Congress, and Wu Yingjie, former CCP secretary of Tibet, potentially implicating Hu Chunhua, who served as vice premier of the State Council of China from 2018 to 2023. Additionally, on October 17, it was announced that Wang Yixin, a former standing committee member and executive vice governor of Heilongjiang, had been expelled from the party. Independent media personality Kai Shinkuan suggests that Wang Yixin's extensive experience at the China National Offshore Oil Corporation, abbreviated as CNOOC, is significant. He points out that Wang was a protege of former CNOOC general manager Wei Lucheng, one of the few high-ranking oil executives who has so far escaped the anti-corruption purges. Kai attributes Wei's survival to the protection of Xing Qinghong, a powerful political figure and a key ally of former CCP leader Jiang Zemin, who also served as Wei's career patron. According to Kai, the investigation into Wang Yixin signals impending trouble for Wei and could be interpreted as a signal that Xi Jinping's ready to crack down on Xing Qinghong. With only a few weeks until the third plenary session, Zhongnanhai's internal power struggle has intensified. Speaking to the Epoch Times, China expert Wang Yi explained that the third plenary session was postponed for half a year because Xi Jinping required time to prepare adequately. Despite the session's economic focus, the economic situation is currently in disarray. Wang Yi explained, she knows he's the target, and he understands that the actual threats come not from civilians like Jack Ma, but from those with significant power, such as the China National Petroleum Corporation, the military industry, and elite families. Wang Yi commented that Xi Jinping, who previously contended with other political factions before the 20th Congress, is now encountering resistance from the entire bureaucracy, which is passively resisting. The CCP faces a dual crisis. On one hand, due to Xi's leadership, people despise him, subordinates seek to replace him, and he is desperately suppressing and controlling. On the other hand, there is a struggle over political lines, and the CCP itself is in a precarious state. Wang Yi concluded, in a stable dynasty, changing an emperor is not problematic, but currently, changing the head would spell the end for the CCP. Xi Jinping traces origins in Yan'an. His words leave much room for deep thought and fright. China's official media, Xinhua, reported on June 19 that from June 17 to 19, CCP leader Xi Jinping personally decided to hold the CCP Central Military Commission's Political Work Conference in Yan'an, Shaanxi Province. During the conference, he emphasized the mission to promote the Yan'an spirit. Analysts suggest that Xi's rhetoric indicates an impending major purge and restructuring, raising significant concerns. In detail, Xi emphasized the importance of maintaining the party's absolute leadership over the military, noting that political construction of the military is the foundation of establishing the military, and that the control of guns must always be in the hands of those who are loyal and reliable to the party, and there must be no place for corrupt elements within the military. Xi also noted that currently, the situation of the world, the country, the party, and the military are undergoing complex and profound changes, with the military facing intricate and complex political challenges. Members of the CCP Central Politburo and Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia and Yi Weidong, as well as Military Commission members Lu Zhenli, Miao Hua, and Zhang Xingmin attended the meeting. Officials from the Military Commission's various departments, directly subordinate institutions, Joint Staff Department, various theaters of operation, all branches of the military, and principal officials from the People's Armed Police Force participated in the conference. Xi Jinping's route-seeking journey. After the 18th CCP National Congress in 2014, Xi Jinping convened a military political work conference in Gudian, Fujian, where Mao Zedong consolidated his control over the CCP's Red Army. This personally decided military political work conference by Xi Jinping took place a few weeks before the long-delayed 20th Third Plenum. The Third Plenum is an important meeting of the CCP Central Committee, which will discuss economic reforms and formally dismiss party members who have failed in their duties. Over the past year, the CCP's military has experienced rare collapsing-style corruption, with several high-ranking officials in areas such as the Rocket Force and Equipment Development Department being ousted. Former State Councilor and Defense Minister Li Shangfu was also dismissed in October last year. Official media reported that at around 3 p.m. on June 17, Xi Jinping led members of the Military Commission and principal officials from various departments and units to visit the revolutionary former site at Wangjiabing. Xi Jinping stated that the purpose of holding the Military Commission's Political Work Conference in Yan'an today, 10 years after the Gudian Conference, was to trace back to the roots. Xi also stated that senior military officers must remember their original mission and take the lead in promoting the Yan'an spirit to achieve the goal of building the military for a century. The so-called military building goal refers to the CCP's aim to establish a world-class military by 2050. For this, Xi Jinping has invested billions of dollars in purchasing and developing equipment, while the military tension in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait has become even more strained. Thus, Xi Jinping's route-seeking trip to Yan'an not only intensifies the international military situation but also fills the CCP's military with tension and unease. It is well known that promoting the Yan'an spirit implies a major purge and rectification, where everyone must pass scrutiny and no one can escape. In February of this year, BBC Chinese reported that the anti-corruption campaign has become a core pillar of the governance system of CCP leaders. Xi Jinping uses the anti-corruption campaign to purge dissenters, and his anti-corruption efforts resemble an uncontrolled Stalinist purge. People feel that she has returned to Mao Zedong's methods, strongly emphasizing loyalty to the party. Recently, there have been rumors in the CCP's military, with dissatisfaction toward Dong Jun as the Minister of Defense. Military seniors, especially old military heads, may press Xi Jinping at the third plenum. On May 1, Lu Honglai, a Chinese pro-democracy activist, wrote on his Wing Swesity blog that the Chinese military represents Xi's greatest fear and concern ahead of the third plenary session. He explained that the military aims to safeguard the interests of the entire Red family group, while Xi's personal dictatorship has severely undermined the interests of other Red families. Wing Swesity blog is a popular destination for the overseas Chinese community. The article stated that Xi's large-scale purge of dissenters in the military under the guise of anti-corruption has led to widespread resentment and dissatisfaction within the military ranks. Therefore, by using this route-seeking trip to Yan'an and sending out the signal to promote the Yan'an spirit, Xi not only reaches a moral and spiritual high point for himself but also consolidates his position in the military by emulating Mao Zedong, providing a historical legitimacy to his actions. Eradicating ethnic culture, CCP massively renames villages in Xinjiang. Human Rights Watch and the Norway-based organization Uyghur Help released a joint report on Tuesday, June 18, revealing the Chinese government's systematic erasure of ethnic culture in Xinjiang. The report details how, between 2009 and 2023, the CCP changed the names of roughly 3,600 Uyghur villages, replacing 630 culturally significant names with ones that align with CCP ideology. For instance, Akmashet, meaning White Mosque, was renamed Unity Village in 2018, while Dudur, a traditional Uyghur instrument, became Red Flag Village in 2022. Kashgar, Hotan, and Aksu were the regions most affected by these changes. Maya Wang, acting China director at Human Rights Watch, noted on X platform that these changes largely took place between 2017 and 2019, coinciding with an escalation of the government's crimes against humanity in the region. She emphasized that these name changes are part of a broader effort to suppress Uyghur cultural and religious identity, calling on governments and the UN to hold the Chinese government accountable for its atrocities in Uyghur areas. The report also highlights the personal impact of these changes, recounting how one villager, recently released from a re-education camp, couldn't find his hometown's name when trying to buy a bus ticket home. Under economic downturn and political pressure, China's middle class sparks an exodus wave. On June 18, Henley & Partners, an international investment advisory firm, released the Private Wealth Migration Report. The report estimates that China will see a net loss of 15,200 millionaires this year, the highest number globally. This rate of outflow is greater than last year's total of 13,800 millionaires. The report, drawing on data from the wealth intelligence agency New World Wealth, projects the net movements of millionaires, individuals with over $100,000 in investable wealth, across various regions. Furthermore, several studies have also noted an increased pace at which China's wealthy and middle-class populations are leaving the country. According to the Huruan Report Chinese HNWI Brand Tendency Report, released in March of this year, nearly 40% of the high-net-worth families surveyed are considering moving abroad. Meanwhile, the World Migration Report 2022 from the United Nations International Organization for Migration, IOM, lists China as the fourth largest source of immigrants globally. Besides the affluent, many middle-class individuals in China are also exploring opportunities to relocate abroad, effectively voting with their feet. The past year has seen a significant rise in the number of Chinese immigrants entering the United States via irregular routes. Data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, show that in 2023, over 52,000 Chinese nationals were detained at various borders for illegal entry, with more than 23,000 of these cases recorded between October and December alone. Historically, this number was only about 1,500 per year. Among those opting for these irregular routes are middle-class individuals dissatisfied with their circumstances in China, who are willing to risk this perilous journey to seek a better life in an unfamiliar setting. Economic recession spurs middle-class exodus. The economic downturn has prompted many in the middle class to leave China, abandoning their jobs, properties, and social networks, which requires considerable resolve. The cost of immigration also represents a significant financial burden for them. On June 19, Voice of America reported that Zhang Yu, a pseudonym, a 34-year-old financial professional at a company owned by a local government financing vehicle, is contemplating leaving China. He cites the country's worsening political and economic climate and the widespread suffering of its people as his primary motivations. Zhang said, "Since the pandemic hit, I've felt the economy has been in freefall. It's anyone's guess when the real estate bubble or the local government debt crisis will finally implode." He also describes his views as being classified as dissident in China, and he does not dare to speak out online while in China, which leads him to feel oppressed. Immigration is challenging for him, despite having consulted various professional agencies and gathered information from immigrant vloggers on YouTube. He is currently considering moving to Canada or some European countries, as options like the US and Japan seem less feasible. Another case is Linda Kai, a distinguished writer and editor in China, mentioned that her husband, employed by an American biopharmaceutical company, was transferred to the U.S. headquarters due to the strained U.S.-China relations and investigations by Chinese authorities into foreign businesses in China. This move led their family to immigrate to the U.S. She noted that many of her peers are envious of her ability to emigrate, particularly because of the restrictions on what can be published in China. She mentioned that even discussing sensitive topics in small private groups can lead to inquiries by authorities. Many of her former colleagues are now exploring immigration options, with liberal arts majors finding fewer opportunities than those in scientific fields. As a result, many are considering language schools in Japan as a pathway to immigration. Japan has recently become a popular destination for Chinese immigrants, with the Chinese population in Japan increasing by 60,000 last year, reaching a total of 820,000. This is the largest recent increase in the number of Chinese residents in Japan. Under political pressure, many are seeking to escape. One Chinese resident named Ixil, frequently circumventing internet censorship, was once called in by the police for sharing a local news item on Platform X. His young child was subjected to brainwashing and hate education at kindergarten. These ever-tightening political and public opinion conditions have reinforced his decision to emigrate. Li Feng, a pseudonym, formerly a journalist in Guangdong province, shared with Voice of America that he had a relatively good and stable life in China. However, the sluggish real estate market left him with unsold properties, and the stringent COVID-19 lockdown policies became intolerable for him and his family, prompting them to leave China without settling his affairs. He explained that the government's actions during the pandemic revealed to him that the remnants of decades of land reforms, anti-rightist movements, and the Cultural Revolution are still present, lurking until the opportunity arises for such oppressive measures to resurface. Consequently, he resolved to leave for the future of the next generation. Li noted that many middle-class individuals in his circle, including neighbors, colleagues, and clients, are also considering immigration. Due to his advanced age, it's challenging for him to find an employer to sponsor a work visa. Thus, he entered the U.S. on a tourist visa but plans to apply for a Ph.D. in political science in the U.S., aiming to acquire knowledge unavailable in China. He intends to enhance his English literacy and document his family's multi-generational experiences in China. He also observed that numerous people are desperate to flee China's current conditions, including those without the financial means or connections, who resort to leaving the country through illegal channels. Officials fall from power or die following CCP's persecution of Falun Gong. In the first half of this year, the Chinese Communist Party's officialdom experienced significant turmoil, with numerous officials either being removed from their positions or suddenly passing away due to illness. In detail, official CCP reports indicate that at least 30 officials were purged in the first half of the year. This group includes high-profile figures such as Wu Yingjie, former party secretary of the Tibet Autonomous Region, Tang Yijuan, former Minister of Justice, and Liu Jiqiang, former Deputy Minister of Justice. According to the Minghui website, which specializes in reporting on the CCP's persecution of Falun Gong, all of these officials had actively participated in the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. Notably, Wu Yingjie was subjected to sanctions by the U.S. State Department in October 2022 for his particularly severe violations of human rights. Additionally, within the CCP's Political and Legal Affairs Committee, which has been instrumental in the persecution of Falun Gong, 12 committee secretaries were investigated. Lai Jinping, a former lawyer from Beijing and chairman of Civil Rights in Canada, commented on the role of China's political and legal institutions that over the past few decades, these institutions have acted as the blade of the CCP, continuously oppressing the Chinese people and violating their fundamental human rights and freedoms, with the persecution of Falun Gong being particularly egregious. Since 1999, the CCP has utilized the entire state apparatus to suppress Falun Gong, a spiritual practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Despite 25 years having passed, the persecution has not stopped. The Minghui website reports that 5,085 practitioners have been persecuted to death. Analysts suggest that these officials, ostensibly purged for internal cleansing by the CCP, actually faced misfortune due to their actions. Lai Jinping further explained that during this cleansing process, many cruel officials and corrupt police were purged by the CCP's own power organs, a practice referred to as retrospective investigation spanning 30 years. Many have thus faced internal purges and met unfortunate ends. Commentator Lan Shu observed, over the past 25 years, many high-ranking officials within the CCP have accumulated blood debts from persecuting Falun Gong practitioners, using these atrocities as a stepping stone for their promotions and to gain greater power. An ancient Chinese proverb states that good deeds are rewarded and evil deeds punished. It is only a matter of time. Notably, this year, numerous officials from both the Political and Legal Affairs Committee and the Public Security and Re-Education Systems have died suddenly. For example, on May 23, Chen Xiaohui, secretary of the Political and Legal Affairs Committee of Sana City in Hebei, suddenly died from an illness. The previous day, Wei Xiaofeng, an instructor at the Public Security Bureau in Hechi City, Guangxi, also died suddenly at work. This series of events may serve as a caution to those who continue to participate in the persecution of Falun Gong. Lai Jinping concluded, regardless of nationality, there is a belief that a divine presence watching over us, and moral laws reside in the hearts of all people. These principles can never be discarded and should be eternally upheld. Therefore, everyone must act according to their conscience, strive to do good and accumulate virtues rather than committing evil or blindly following the CCP's directives. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.